Chris, you were leading. I mean, I've been following your content on the Acolyte. I have not watched a single episode. I refuse to subscribe to Disney Plus, and it's my cross to bear. But I get all of my information from Chris Gore, from Geeks and Gamers, from Nerdrotic, Critical Drinker, from creators, and that's how I'm viewing all of this. But you were the first guy. You were the first man through the wall, like crying out into the wilderness, saying this will destroy Star Wars forever. And you did that weeks ago, and I have rarely seen a prediction so right.
Well, there's several things that are disconcerting about the Acolyte. And just the direction of the Star Wars brand in general, and putting the race thing aside, Star Wars is a boys' brand. Star Wars is for young boys who need heroes, and they need them now more than ever. As a father to a son, one of the great things was to show my son when he was young Star Wars, something we can enjoy together. It's so wired into what boys like, and that doesn't mean there aren't female fans of Star Wars. I have friends who work in animation. One thing they always say is that girls will watch shows targeted to boys, but boys will not watch shows targeting girls. That's just a fact of young children. You have young children. Mine are adults. So I got to pass that on to them. But what they're doing is so disheartening. It would be like taking the Barbie brand and let's make it so boys like Barbie. Makes no sense. They have lost billions by not focusing on the target, and they have diluted and destroyed one of the greatest brands in entertainment history by just wiping away the male heroes in it. And not only that, accusing fans of being racist for not liking it. Look, the same fans they accuse of being racist were the same fans saying, where is Lando Calrissian? We love Billy D. Williams. Why is he not in the Star Wars sequels? He showed up at the end in a bit part. Everyone loved Lando. Everyone loved Mace Windu, Sam Jackson. Those are the same fans. How are they racist? They weren't racist then, but they're racist now somehow. It's a deflection because the show is bad. Nothing to do with race. It's just a bad show.
Dude, we got you here in January. We got you, boy. Look at the man. Look at the man cook. In January, this tweet stamped from January, you are predicting that the Acolyte will destroy Star Wars.
Well,
dude,
I can't. Yes. Well, I can't imagine if you made a Star Wars movie for men, and there's so many things that for men. For example, Star Wars contains a lot of what I would describe as gear porn, which is sorry to use that word on your show, Benny. But it's like cars, right? And Han Solo was piloting a hot rod, the Millennium Falcon, right? Using tools and spaceships and laser swords and guns. Guns are a big part of Star Wars. It's all stuff that men like. So I don't see why they don't lean into that. And the people they have hired to shepherd this franchise are just wholly unqualified. They just are not. They're I don't know where they find some of these people, but it's very disappointing. You know, it's not like sorry.
Please, we have the creator of the Rippaverse, on screen. It's like when somebody loves something and creates something, they care for it. It's like a child, it's just like raising a child. I have 3 kids. And you love that child and you care for it. And George Lucas in interviews talked about Han, Luke, and Leia as his children, right? And I think many creators feel that. And when it's not your child, actually, that's when abuse can happen, right? And when you don't care about the product, that's when you see people mistreat it. And I think that's quite frankly what's happened. Like, is a series of abusive actions taken by people that actually don't give a shit about Star Wars.
It's not just company wide; it's industry wide. I mean, Star Wars is suffering the same fate that you go to the big two, even with comic books, stuff that we've been talking about in comic books for a very long time. And it's so very, very obvious. I think these people like to believe that the customers are stupid, and they're not. They can sniff this stuff out. They will give you the benefit of the doubt oftentimes, but they're not stupid. So when you bring in people that don't know basic things, it shows. It is. Oh, people are aware of that. You speak about things in interviews, and you see these directors or producers, and you can see they're just completely out of there. How did you get this position? Why are you here? So you have a bunch of people, Star Wars, Marvel, you can argue DC's, all of those guys are suffering right now in that the people that are unfortunately in control, they use it as a vehicle for something else, right? Maybe it's just status. But oftentimes it does have to do with social justice. It does have to do with social issues. And they're using this as a vehicle to sort of perpetuate those ideas. That's all this is. This is why they'll run it into the ground, move on to the next project like it's nothing. And meanwhile, all of the fans that have been supporting this stuff for several decades are left with just ashes. And that's what sucks, because you can see it from a mile away. I mean, you don't have to look that far. When you see who these people are that they're bringing in, and you look at who they got jobs over, and it's all these qualified, especially in our space, Chris. We know so many people that are qualified to talk about things such as Star Trek. And do those guys ever get the call for the position? Would they even be considered for those positions? No, absolutely not. Maybe it's because of their skin tone. Maybe it's ideologically, but either way, the people that actually care about this stuff are not the ones that are running the show. And that's why you get things like the Acolyte. We need to conceptualize for the people that are out there. Acolyte, I believe they spent double of what they spent on the Obi-Wan show. Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong. They spent $180 million on this, right?
Wow.
Yes.
$180 million. There's no way that they're going to make that back. To be fair, Disney Plus has always lost money. It's a money sink in itself. But that's the crazy thing. Guys, we are talking about Star Wars. What do you mean Star Wars can't make money? That doesn't make sense, and it shows that they have absolutely ruined their reputations.
So what does it look like to actually destroy a brand? Chris, you predicted that there was a specific moment where the Acolyte actually destroyed Star Wars forever, and this has now become, quite a famous scene. I'm not sure we need the audio. My ears no longer don't need to bleed that much, but let's. I mean, maybe just a little bit. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, guys, is this is it Star Wars? Maybe that's the raging debate here, and I appreciate your expertise on these things, because someone like me, who I don't do this professionally, I'm just here to consume product. I look at this and I'm like, bro,
look,
there's no way that Han Solo exists in this universe.
Yeah, witches in Star Wars makes no sense. Look, when you think of these brands, you think of characters. I say Star Trek, you think Kirk, Spock, McCoy, or Riker, Picard. Also with Star Wars, it's Han, Luke, and Leia. And if they told the continuing adventures of those three characters and reunited them in a scene, which they didn't do in the Star Wars sequels. Many people got upset about The Last Jedi. For me, it was The Force Awakens. When they could not reunite the three most beloved fictional characters in cinema in one scene together, I knew it was over. It was over. It showed a lack of understanding of what Star Wars is. It's the story of this family, this broken family. If you go back to the original trilogy, there are so many ideas that they're trying to ruin with that scene with the witches. There are very Christian themes in Star Wars. Return of the Jedi, the redemption of Darth Vader. It's very religious, and I think they're trying to take that element out of it and actually make villains out of the heroes. The Jedi are bad now. These witches, we see it from their perspective. Look at Return of the Jedi. It gives me chills thinking about that. Luke redeeming his father, right? Who was, You could not save him. He saved his father.
Wow.
It's a beautiful story. And take that further with Luke and maybe Luke's children, right? There are no surviving kids from the Star Wars sequels now. It's they ruined it on purpose, and it's horrible to see.
It is, right?
Yeah.
Like that is so horrible to see. You've like what, Kylo Ren does,
Right.
Yeah, and then even the existence of Palpatine at the very end of that trilogy sort of gets rid of Darth Vader's sacrifice, right? Like it totally eliminates that altogether. So the retconning, that's such an interesting note that you just struck there, Chris. It's like that you actually took the hero's arc, the hero's journey, the Christian story out of Star Wars and replaced it with witchcraft. Holy shit, man. It's like that's demonic.
Lesbian force using threads and pregnant. None of it makes sense. It's illogical. Even if you're watching it just objectively, you can be somewhat of a normie, and you're like to what the point you just made, Benny, earlier. You're watching this even as a normie, and you're like, what am I looking at right now? Right? So they've lost everybody. That's who they honestly wanted to appeal to. And I think that's why the industry went in the direction that it did, because for whatever reason, they thought that they could sacrifice the old fans for the sake of gaining new ones. Didn't work. That was never going to be something that worked. But I know Chris brings up a great point, and I think the retconning, and you see this again industry-wide, they do this stuff on purpose, and they're essentially running from the past because they know that kind of gets in the way of people enjoying the slop that they put out there. And it's not even really slop. That's not accurate. I think people would rather have that than what you're getting right now, because what you're getting is just straight up agenda. They're beating you over the head with it. It's very heavy-handed, and it's on purpose. So they ruin, for example, characters that people have loved. They ruin storylines that people have loved because it's almost like they want to get at the people that made this possible for them. You get in the way, and this is why you see articles. I know, Chris, on various shows we've talked about this, and you see these weird articles that come from some of the access media types, but also just general journalists that seem to hate the customers. And the Acolyte's doing bad right now in terms of the fan feedback. But wait, it's not the Acolyte's fault. It's the fans' fault. It's you guys' issue. You guys and the complaining and everything that you do, you're the problem, and why Acolyte is the way that it is, because they act like you have to live up to the standard of these creators, using that term loosely, instead of them trying to create something that appeals to the customer base that already exists. You have to go out of your way to screw up Star Wars. It's a difficult thing to do, but damn it, they did it. They were very successful. So if nothing else, they deserve credit for that. All of it, actually.
Bro, this one sent me. This one sent me from Forbes. The Acolyte's 50% audience score is embarrassing for you, not the Acolyte. This is Baghdad Bob level stuff. This is really North Korea. It's like you ever seen the North Korean news broadcasts where they're like, dear leader says all streets are paved in gold. Praise dear leader. Like, this is dear leader kind of stuff. You're the problem.
In no other industry do they blame the customer for their own failings. There's a very famous, you should look it up, a very famous Domino's pizza campaign where they just came out and said, you know what? We know our pizza's bad. We're going to improve it. It's seriously, you can find it on YouTube.
It's famous.
Actually.
Yep.
Yeah, very famous campaign. The fact that this is a marketing strategy from Lucasfilm and Disney, one of the few companies that uses this tactic, it's terrible. It's awful, and it needs to stop for sure.
I would argue, and again, I'm just so grateful for the two of you coming on this program and educating me. And every time I do Friday Night Tights, and every time I watch your channels, you educate me about this world, and I'm just a consumer, right? I'm simply a consumer of the product, and that's all I can be. My day-to-day is typically covering politics. However, I do believe that there is a corollary in politics of fan blaming, which is when politicians attack the will of the American people and the American people themselves by Barack Obama calling people bitter clingers, Hillary Clinton calling them deplorables. Half the country is deplorables, right? Joe Biden's been doing a lot of this and a lot of painting, not you're an American who disagrees with me, right? And that's okay because it's a free country, but like you're evil for disagreeing with me and I'm going to attack you for disagreeing with me. And that actually seems to be that seems to be a trend across industries.
Yeah, it's it is a tactic that doesn't ever work. I don't think it's ever been successful. Why would it? But it's so often deployed that they start blaming the customers, anything to rid themselves of any sort of responsibility. And that's because they're going into it like it's their little place to play in. It's not anything that they really have any sort of emotional attachment to by any means. So because of their arrogance or narcissism, they feel, like I said earlier, that you must live up to their standards. Therefore, when you give them just the slightest bit of pushback, and remember, we're not talking about haters, and I think that's an important distinction to make. This is what kills me about folks that, again, oftentimes it is access media types that go after folks in our corner of the internet. And I'm like, have you guys seen, be it Nerd Erotic or even Chris Gore or even Minds and our backgrounds and how much money that we've invested in these companies? You think that we're arguing from a perspective of somebody that just hates just to hate? No, we're people that actually enjoy this stuff. We love this stuff. And you, as these, again, using this term loosely, creators are ruining it for what reason? Who knows? I mean, they all have their own individual agenda. Sometimes it's status, oftentimes it's political, sometimes it's social. I don't care what it is. It has nothing to do with making good Star Wars, good Disney films, or good shows, or good Marvel, good DC. It has nothing to do with that and everything to do with agenda. And everybody that is a long-time customer gets in the way of that. And that's why they react in the way that they do with so much vigor, or rather anger towards people that make them, in a sense, because they are the customers. Without them, you are nothing. And they're finding this stuff out the hard way.